Have you ever thought about what would happen if Voldemort had a child? What if this child grew up with one goal: to bring back the Dark Lord? In today's video, you will find out the shocking truth about Delphi, the mysterious daughter of Voldemort. Yes, it's real. Voldemort had a daughter. Her name is Delphi, and many fans don't know about her because she appears only in The Cursed Child, the controversial play set after the epilogue of the last book. This fan-fiction-like sequel introduced several unexpected characters, but Delphi remains the strangest of them all. She became the catalyst for the main conflict, yet her existence raises more questions than answers. When did Bellatrix become pregnant? That's the first mystery. Bellatrix, Voldemort's most devoted follower, was revealed to be Delphi's mother. But the timeline doesn't add up. Delphi was born before the Battle of Hogwarts, but the books never mention Bellatrix being pregnant. The only logical window is sometime after the Order of the Phoenix, but before the Deathly Hallows. That might explain why Voldemort and Bellatrix are absent for most of the Half-Blood Prince. But the problem remains: how did no one notice? What were Voldemort's plans for her? Let's be honest. The Dark Lord, obsessed with immortality and blood purity, wouldn't suddenly decide, you know what, I think I'd like a child with Bellatrix. No, if he had a child, it was for a purpose. But what purpose? A successor. That would imply he believed he might fail, contradicting his belief in his own invincibility. A servant? But he already had plenty. Did he plan to raise her as his equal? Someone who could wield his dark knowledge and spread chaos? We can only speculate. Why was she his only child? If Voldemort truly wanted an heir, why stop at one? History shows that powerful rulers often had multiple children to secure their legacy. Voldemort created 7 Horcruxes, obsessing over his own survival. Yet he left just one descendant. Hardly a strategic move for someone who prided himself on being the most powerful wizard of all time. What did Delphi really want? She was obsessed with bringing her father back. She wanted to prove herself worthy. But if she had succeeded, what was her end game? Did she see herself as his right hand? What if Voldemort had different plans for her? Could she have turned against him? The Cursed Child never gives us real answers. How did she manipulate people so easily? Delphi fooled Amos Diggory with magic, making him believe she was his niece. But what about the others? A little shyness, a touch of charm. Albus and Scorpius trusted her almost instantly. But where did she learn this? Voldemort perfected his manipulative skills over years of practice. Delphi had no such experience. So was this talent inherited? Did she ever receive a Hogwarts letter? Deep inside the castle, an ancient quill and book record the name of every magical child. It never makes mistakes. If Delphi was truly Voldemort's daughter, her name should have appeared. So did she get a letter? If not, why? If she did, why didn't she go? How did she sneak into Hogwarts? When Albus and Scorpius messed with time, things went wrong. They didn't save Cedric. They only created more chaos. Ron and Hermione never married, and Albus was sorted into Gryffindor, separating him from Scorpius. Then Albus sent Delphi a letter, and somehow she got into Hogwarts. But how? Even Delphi herself admitted it was too easy. If an ordinary girl could break into the school, what does that say about Hogwarts' security? Why did she choose amnesia? In the end, Harry and his friends stopped her from rewriting history. She wanted to prevent her father from meeting baby Harry, ensuring his survival. But when she failed, she did something unexpected. She begged them to erase her memory or kill her. Why? Was her connection to Voldemort so deep that losing him destroyed her will to live? And why did she surrender so easily? Even Azkaban isn't escape-proof. Why not keep fighting for her father's legacy? Delphi had the blood of the Dark Lord running through her veins. If she truly inherited his power, why didn't she step forward as the new Dark Lady? The magical world still had remnants of Voldemort's followers, scattered, broken, but not gone. She could have gathered them. She could have claimed her place. Yet she didn't. Instead of rising as a leader, she clung to the past. Her obsession wasn't about ruling. It was about bringing back a father she had never even met. Was it grief, desperation, or was she simply not capable of filling Voldemort's shoes? Voldemort built his empire with fear. He didn't just demand loyalty, he forced it. His presence alone could make his followers tremble. Even those closest to him, like Lucius Malfoy, feared his wrath more than they respected him. Delphi, however, had no such presence. She relied on manipulation, not domination. She tricked people into trusting her, but she couldn't command them. If Delphi had been serious about taking her father's place, she had options. The Lestrange family was still powerful. Rodolphus Lestrange, Bellatrix's husband, survived the war. He had been one of Voldemort's most devoted followers. If anyone would have accepted Delphi as the new Dark Lady, it was him. But he never did, and she never sought him out. The remnants of the Death Eaters were not entirely wiped out. Many fled into hiding. Some, like the Carrows, avoided Azkaban. Others, like Walden McNair, remained loyal to the old ways. If Delphi had stepped forward as their leader, promising to continue Voldemort's vision, she might have found followers, but she never even tried. Even the younger generation, those who had grown up under the shadow of the Dark Lord, might have rallied around her. Scorpius Malfoy's alternate timeline revealed what could have happened if Voldemort's ideology had lived on. Hogwarts was ruled by fear. Students were trained in dark magic. The pure-blood supremacy Voldemort preached had taken root. It showed that the embers of his reign could still ignite into something more. But Delphi didn't try to fan those flames. She had knowledge. More than any surviving Death Eater, she understood the past. She knew of the Horcruxes, the prophecies, the rise and fall of her father's reign. She had access to information that could have been used to reshape the magical world. Yet she did nothing with it. Her magic was powerful, but it wasn't enough. She could fly without a broom, an ability only Voldemort himself had mastered. That alone should have set her apart. She could perform advanced spells, deceive experienced wizards like Amos Diggory, and manipulate those around her. But power alone does not make a leader. Voldemort had a vision, a twisted, cruel vision, but a vision nonetheless. He wanted to reshape the world. He saw himself as a ruler, a god among mortals. Delphi had no vision. She had no grand plan beyond her obsession with time travel. She didn't want to conquer. She wanted to rewind. Even her attempt to change history was flawed. She relied on Albus and Scorpius, two boys barely capable of handling a time-turner. She didn't create an army. She didn't seek out powerful allies. She placed her entire future in the hands of two teenagers, hoping they would help her achieve her goal. It was reckless. It was desperate. It was not the move of a true Dark Lady. The most telling sign of her weakness was how easily she gave up. When Voldemort fell, his followers either fought to the bitter end or fled. Bellatrix, her own mother, died still fighting. Even when outnumbered, even when facing impossible odds, true Death Eaters never surrendered. Delphi, however, did. The moment she failed, she crumbled. When she was captured, she didn't scheme her escape. She didn't try to rally the remaining followers. She begged to have her memory erased. It was as if, without her father, she had no reason to exist. A true Dark Lady would have regrouped, rebuilt, and sought revenge. But Delphi was not a Dark Lady. Had she truly inherited her father's ambition, she would have done what he did, started from the shadows, gathered power, eliminated threats one by one. She could have targeted the children of Harry, Ron, and Hermione. She could have sought revenge against the Aurors who hunted the last Death Eaters. She could have created fear again, but she did nothing. Perhaps she was never meant to lead. Perhaps she was only ever meant to be a fragment of Voldemort's legacy, a remnant of his madness, not a continuation of his reign. The difference between them was clear. Voldemort was a force of nature, a storm that swept across the wizarding world. Delphi was a shadow, a whisper of something that could have been, but never was. Even her identity worked against her. Voldemort had built his legend from the ground up. He transformed himself into the Dark Lord. He erased his past, his weaknesses, his human ties. Delphi, however, was defined by her past. She was a prisoner to it. She didn't try to escape it. She tried to live in it. Her story ends not with a rise to power, but with a whimper. She was defeated not by a battle, not by an army, but by her own failure to move forward. She had everything she needed to become the next great villain: power, knowledge, legacy. But she lacked the most important thing: a purpose beyond her father. Could she have become the Dark Lady? Maybe, but she never truly tried, and that is why she was never meant to rule. Voldemort had no use for love, family, or anything that did not serve his purpose. He viewed people as tools, disposable, replaceable, and valuable only if they contributed to his power. So why, if Delphi really existed, did he never mention her? Why didn't he use her as he used everyone else? Bellatrix was his most devoted follower. She worshipped him, obeyed him without question, and died fighting for his cause. If she bore his child, Voldemort would have known. Bellatrix would have made sure of it. Yet there is no mention of her being pregnant, no sign that Voldemort acknowledged a daughter. He never hesitated to use people for his benefit. Why would he ignore his own child? If Delphi had been born before the final battle, Voldemort could have used her as leverage. The Dark Lord was a master strategist. He manipulated Draco Malfoy by forcing him to kill Dumbledore. He tortured Neville's parents to send a message. He marked Harry as his equal to ensure the prophecy played into his hands. A child, especially one with his blood, could have been another weapon in his arsenal. Imagine the impact if Voldemort had revealed his daughter to the wizarding world. He could have turned her into a symbol, proof that his legacy would endure. The Death Eaters worshipped him as a near-divine figure. They might have seen Delphi as his heir, someone to rally behind even if he fell, but he never did this. He acted as though she never existed. Voldemort's survival was always his top priority. He split his soul into Horcruxes, experimented with magic beyond comprehension, and sought immortality at any cost. If Delphi had any value, it would have been in furthering that goal. Could she have been used in a ritual to restore his power? Could her blood have strengthened him in some way? If she truly was his flesh and blood, wouldn't he have exploited that? He never shied away from dark rituals. He used Harry's blood to return to life. He drained unicorns for strength. He even sought the power of the Deathly Hallows. A daughter could have been another sacrifice, another source of dark magic. Yet he never once acknowledged her. He never sought to use her in any spell, any battle, any plot. If Delphi had been in his plans, he would have prepared her. He trained his followers, groomed them for battle, and instilled fear and loyalty. Barty Crouch Jr. spent a year disguised as Mad-Eye Moody to bring Harry to the graveyard. Draco was carefully manipulated to serve his will. Even Nagini, a snake, had a role in his grand design, but there is no trace of Delphi being trained, no evidence that he ever intended for her to play a role in his war. Perhaps the most damning evidence against Delphi's existence in Voldemort's plans is his own nature. He did not believe in lineage. He saw family ties as weaknesses. He rejected his Muggle father, despised his heritage, and sought to erase all connection to his past. Why would he suddenly change? Why would he, of all people, care about having an heir? He built his identity on the idea that he was beyond human constraints. He didn't love, didn't care, didn't form real attachments. He saw himself as the ultimate wizard, not someone who needed a child to carry on his name. The very idea contradicts everything about him. Even when he saw himself losing power, he never considered a successor. He never prepared for failure. That was his flaw, his arrogance. He believed he was invincible. Creating a child for the purpose of continuing his work would imply he had doubts. And Voldemort never doubted himself. Had he survived, would he have used Delphi? If she had proven useful, perhaps, but only as a pawn, never as an heir. He had no interest in legacy. His goal was to rule forever, not pass the torch. It is almost as if Delphi was created not by Voldemort, but by writers trying to extend a story. Her existence does not fit within his character. It raises more questions than it answers. Voldemort did not ignore opportunities. He took every advantage, every tool, every person who could bring him closer to victory. Yet he never used Delphi. That tells us one thing: she was never meant to exist in his world. If Delphi truly existed, where was she during the Battle of Hogwarts? This was the moment Voldemort fought for his survival, the night his empire collapsed. If he had a daughter, a secret heir, wouldn't she have been part of the fight? If Bellatrix had been pregnant during the battle, it would have been impossible for her to fight. And yet she was there, dueling Hermione, Ginny, and Luna with deadly precision. There was no sign of weakness, no hesitation. She fought with the same reckless passion that defined her. Could she have been hiding a pregnancy while casting lethal spells? That seems unlikely. If Delphi had already been born, where was she kept? Voldemort had no interest in raising children. He never built a safe house or a sanctuary. His existence was one of war, not of family. The Death Eaters had strongholds, but none were designed to shelter an infant. Malfoy Manor was their base, but Narcissa and Lucius were already disillusioned with the Dark Lord. Would they have willingly hidden a child for him? Rodolphus Lestrange, Bellatrix's husband, was a devoted Death Eater. If anyone knew about Delphi, it would have been him. But after Voldemort's fall, Rodolphus was sent to Azkaban. He never spoke of a daughter. He never tried to reclaim her. If Delphi existed, why was she abandoned? Even if she had been a young child, the battle would have affected her life. The Death Eaters fought to the death. If they knew of a secret heir, they would have protected her. Someone would have tried to escape with her. Yet there are no mentions of a hidden child among the survivors. If she was old enough to wield a wand, why didn't she fight? The Battle of Hogwarts saw children standing against Death Eaters. Young students risked their lives. Neville Longbottom led the resistance, proving that age did not matter in a war. If Delphi had the blood of Voldemort and the training of Bellatrix, she should have been at the center of the conflict. Did Voldemort deliberately keep her hidden? If so, why? He showed no hesitation in sending Draco Malfoy into danger. He had no issue sacrificing his followers. Why would he suddenly develop parental instincts? Why would he shield Delphi from the war? Perhaps she was hidden because she was considered too important. If Voldemort planned to use her for some greater purpose, maybe she was placed somewhere safe. But then why is there no record of anyone guarding her? No trusted Death Eater assigned to protect the Dark Lord's legacy? If she was in hiding, who took care of her? Voldemort did not form emotional connections. Bellatrix was fanatically loyal, but she lived for war, not for motherhood. Who raised Delphi? Who kept her fed, clothed and trained, while her mother was fighting and her father was obsessed with his own survival? When Voldemort died, the world of the Death Eaters collapsed. They were hunted down, imprisoned, and scattered. If Delphi existed, she would have been in danger. The Aurors pursued every trace of Voldemort's influence. Any child of his would have been seen as a threat. Yet Delphi grew up unnoticed, untouched by the aftermath. How? By the time of the cursed child, Delphi is an adult, but her past remains vague. She claims to be the daughter of Voldemort, yet she has no history, no presence in the records of the wizarding world. If she was hidden, who ensured that she survived? Who taught her magic? Who told her about her father? It's as if she appeared from nowhere, as if she was inserted into the story without consideration for the timeline. If she had been part of Voldemort's plan, her absence during his downfall makes no sense. She had every reason to be there, yet she was nowhere. The idea that Voldemort had a secret daughter should have changed everything. It should have rewritten the history of the war, but it doesn't, because there is no place for Delphi in that story. If she existed, she was either completely abandoned or deliberately hidden. Neither option fits with Voldemort's character. Neither option explains why she was never mentioned, never sought after, never used. Delphi's existence is a contradiction. She is a ghost in history, a character without roots. The Battle of Hogwarts was the defining moment of her father's life, and she was absent. That tells us everything. Voldemort never trusted anyone. He never believed in loyalty, only in control. Every one of his followers, even the most devoted, was just a tool. So why, if Delphi truly existed, did he choose Bellatrix Lestrange to bear his child? Bellatrix was his most fanatical servant. She worshipped him, obeyed his every command, and saw him as more than a leader, almost a god. But Voldemort did not care for admiration. He did not return devotion. He did not need love. So why would he create a child with her? He had no interest in human connections. His own mother had died bringing him into the world, and he despised the very idea of family. He saw love as weakness, something to be destroyed, not embraced. A child, especially one created in the traditional way, made no sense. If he had truly wanted an heir, wouldn't he have used magic? Voldemort had spent his entire life bending the rules of nature to his will. He split his soul, cheated death, and conquered the most powerful magical artifacts. If he desired a successor, why would he choose something as ordinary as pregnancy? Dark magic could have given him the heir he wanted, a ritual, a spell, something beyond human limits. He had already created Horcruxes, pieces of himself. He could have crafted a new body, forged an heir through magic alone. Yet he didn't. Why? Bellatrix was a warrior, not a mother. She lived for battle, for chaos, for serving her master. She had no interest in raising a child. If Voldemort had truly chosen her to carry his legacy, it would have been for strategy, not sentiment. But what was the strategy? If he wanted a perfect successor, why not someone stronger? Bellatrix was powerful, but she was reckless. She acted on impulse, not calculation. Voldemort, the ultimate strategist, would have chosen someone with a sharper mind, someone more disciplined. Even within his ranks there were better candidates. Severus Snape, despite his hidden allegiance, had a mind Voldemort respected. Lucius Malfoy had political influence. If Voldemort sought an heir, he would have chosen someone whose bloodline held value. But Bellatrix? She was devoted, but she was not strategic. Bellatrix's obsession with him was undeniable. She would have done anything for him. But Voldemort did not indulge in human desire. He saw the body as a vessel, nothing more. The idea that he would engage in something so mundane contradicts everything about him. If a child was necessary for his plans, why not create one through dark magic? Blood rituals, ancient spells, these were things Voldemort understood. If he needed a successor, he would have built one, not conceived one. The entire idea feels like a later invention, like something forced into the narrative without thought for Voldemort's character. He did not see himself as human. He had cast aside every part of his past that tied him to mortality. Why would he suddenly embrace it? His actions prove that he had no interest in continuing his bloodline. He never sought a family, never hinted at wanting an heir. He wanted to live forever. An heir implies that he expected to die. Voldemort never planned for death. If Delphi was real, why did he never acknowledge her? Even in private, even among his closest followers, there was no mention of a child. No sign of protection, no whisper of an heir. A secret that Big would have left a trace. But there was nothing. Even Bellatrix, in her final moments, did not mention a daughter. She fought for Voldemort, not for a future for her child. She had no hesitation, no fear, no hidden motives. If she had carried the Dark Lord's heir, wouldn't she have shown some sign of it? Voldemort saw himself as above human nature. He abandoned his birth name, rejected his past, and reshaped himself into something greater. A child would tie him to the very world he tried to escape. The entire idea of Delphi being his daughter unravels when placed against his character. He did not trust, he did not love, he did not seek an heir, so why would he have chosen Bellatrix or anyone to bear his child? If Delphi was real, she was never part of his plan. She was never meant to exist. Her presence in the story is not a secret revelation. It is a contradiction, a rewriting of a villain who never needed a successor, because he never planned to leave a legacy. He planned to be eternal. Could Voldemort even have children? That is the real question. His body was not normal, his soul was not whole. The Horcruxes had torn him apart piece by piece until he became something less than human. His transformation was more than just physical. He had stripped away everything that connected him to mortality. From the moment he began splitting his soul, he started changing. His eyes turned red. His face lost its human features. His voice became colder, more snake-like. When he returned to his body in Goblet of Fire, he barely resembled the man he once was. Peter Pettigrew performed a dark ritual to bring him back, using blood, bone, and flesh. The result was something unnatural. Could such a body even function the way a normal wizard's would? Voldemort had no interest in human needs. He never ate in the books. He never slept. His body was sustained by dark magic alone. Even Dumbledore noted that Voldemort had gone further than anyone along the path that leads to immortality. He was no longer a man. He was something else. Love, desire, family, these were things he rejected. Tom Riddle grew up in an orphanage, unloved and unwanted. He saw family as weakness. He despised his Muggle father for abandoning his mother. He killed his own father without hesitation. He never longed for connection. He longed for power. Would a man who feared death so much ever care about having an heir? He never sought to pass on his bloodline. He never prepared for a successor. He believed he would rule forever. Creating a child would mean admitting that his reign might end. And Voldemort never planned for endings. Even his name rejected the idea of lineage. Tom Riddle had been a person. Lord Voldemort was a concept, a symbol. He erased his past, destroyed his ties to his birth, and became something new. a father. That was too human for him. His magic had twisted his body beyond recognition. His skin was white as bone, his fingers long and unnatural. He had slits for nostrils like a snake. These were not just aesthetic changes, they were signs of something deeper. His humanity had been burned away. Could such a being even create life? His Horcruxes made him immortal, but at what cost? Magic this dark always has consequences. Dumbledore believed his soul had become so damaged that he could never fully return to life. Slughorn was horrified by the mere idea of making more than one Horcrux. Voldemort made 7. He no longer had a complete soul. He had no true physical form until Pettigrew's ritual gave him a new one. And even then, that body was a construct, born from dark spells, sustained by unnatural forces. Could such a thing conceive a child? Some fans speculate that his body might not have been capable of such things. Others believe that he was so detached from human nature that he would never have even considered it. Either way, the logic behind Delphi's existence collapses. If Voldemort had wanted a successor, he would have created one through magic. He experimented with spells beyond anyone's understanding. If he truly needed an heir, he would have made one through a ritual, not a pregnancy. His entire philosophy was built on control. He controlled his Death Eaters through fear. He controlled his enemies through terror. Would he allow something as unpredictable as a child to exist, a being that could one day defy him? Delphi's existence feels like an afterthought, a late addition to a story that never needed her. If Voldemort truly had a daughter, it changes everything we know about him. And yet the books never hint at such a possibility, because it was never meant to be. Could Voldemort have had children? Maybe, in theory. But would he? Everything about him says no. He wanted to be the Dark Lord, not the Dark Father. His goal was immortality, not legacy. Delphi is not just an illogical character. She is an impossible one. She does not fit into the world J.K. Rowling created. She does not belong in the story of Voldemort, because Voldemort was never meant to be human enough to have a child. Delphi is powerful, too powerful. She casts advanced spells, duels experienced auras, and even flies without a broom. All without a Hogwarts education. Where did she learn all this? Magic requires training. Even Voldemort, a prodigy, spent years studying. He devoured books, experimented with spells, and mastered the dark arts under the guidance of some of the greatest magical minds at Hogwarts. But Delphi? She seems to have simply figured it out. She grew up in isolation, raised by a man called the Augure, a follower of her father. But he was old, unremarkable, and not known for his power. He was not a master duelist. He was not a dark arts expert. So how could he have trained someone to fight like her? Spells are not just about power. They require precision, control, and practice. Even Harry, despite being a natural at defense against the dark arts, needed years of experience to hold his own against trained wizards. But Delphi? She goes toe-to-toe with seasoned auras as if she was born ready. Her skill with wandless magic is another mystery. Only the most advanced wizards perform magic without a wand. Dumbledore could do it. Voldemort could do it. Even Snape managed some wandless spells. But Delphi? She does it effortlessly. And then there's the flying. No broom, no thestral, no spell, just flight. Only Voldemort ever demonstrated this ability. He discovered this form of movement late in his life after extensive magical experimentation. He never taught it to anyone. Even his most loyal followers never mastered it. So how did Delphi? Flying without a broom is a unique form of dark magic. It took Voldemort years to develop. It was his signature skill. Delphi should have no way of knowing it, let alone mastering it. Yet, somehow, she does. Even her dueling skills are questionable. Aurors are trained to fight against dark wizards. They spend years perfecting defensive and offensive magic. Harry, Ron, and Hermione all had to fight for their lives multiple times before they could even hold their own against Voldemort's followers. Delphi, with no known experience, fights on their level. How? She defeats skilled opponents with ease. She manipulates Albus and Scorpius, two students who, while inexperienced, still had Hogwarts training. She deceives Amos Diggory, an older wizard who should have been wise enough to sense something was wrong. Magic leaves traces. The Ministry tracks underage magic. They monitor magical outbursts. If Delphi had been secretly practicing advanced spells, someone would have noticed. There would have been records, but there is nothing, no warnings, no signs of magical education. If she was self-taught, how did she experiment? Where did she learn her spells, books, forbidden scrolls, dark wizards in hiding? None of this is explained. She just knows. And that is not how magic works in this world. Magic has rules. Skills take time to develop. Even Voldemort, the most gifted student Hogwarts ever saw, needed training. Delphi has no such backstory, yet she is presented as his equal. Even Dumbledore admitted that power alone was not enough. Knowledge mattered. Understanding magic, its history, and its secrets took effort. Delphi's abilities defy all of this. Her very existence is built on contradictions. She is powerful but untrained. She is skilled but has no teacher. She flies but was never taught. She duels but never practiced. It is as if she was written to be strong without any thought to how she got there. If Delphi was meant to be Voldemort's true heir, she should have followed his path. She should have studied, experimented, and built her strength over time. Instead, she appears fully formed, a dark prodigy with no past to explain her abilities. Her power is not earned. It is simply given to her by the story, and that makes her the most unrealistic wizard in the entire Harry Potter universe. Voldemort feared death more than anything. Every choice he made, every crime he committed, was to escape it. He created Horcruxes, shattered his soul, and abandoned his humanity, all for the sake of immortality. So if he truly had a daughter, why wasn't she part of this plan? His Horcruxes were his greatest protection, 7 objects, each containing a fragment of his soul. He chose them carefully, artifacts with meaning, items that tied him to the wizarding world's past. They were hidden, guarded, and nearly impossible to destroy. But if he had a child, wouldn't that have been the ultimate Horcrux? A living Horcrux would have been perfect. Unlike a ring or a locket, a person could move, think, and fight back. A daughter, raised with his ideals, trained to protect his soul, could have been his greatest creation. Yet he never even considered it. He knew the risks of a living Horcrux. Harry was proof of that. Voldemort accidentally turned him into one, and it became his greatest mistake. But Harry was an enemy. Delphi, if she had existed, would have been a willing vessel. Wouldn't she? Voldemort never hesitated to use those around him. He sent Draco Malfoy on a suicide mission, sacrificed his most loyal followers, and disposed of anyone who failed him. If he had a daughter, he would have used her, not as an heir, not as family, but as a tool. Even Bellatrix, the most devoted of his followers, was never trusted with true power. He kept his Horcruxes hidden from everyone. He did not share his secrets even with those who worshipped him. If Delphi was real, would he have trusted her with his soul? He never trusted anyone completely. Even his inner circle feared him. Lucius Malfoy, a powerful and respected Death Eater, was given a Horcrux to hold, but only as a test. When he failed, he lost everything. If Voldemort wouldn't trust a seasoned Death Eater with a piece of his soul, why would he trust a child? His Horcruxes were meant to last forever. He chose objects that wouldn't age, weaken, or betray him. A daughter, no matter how loyal, was unpredictable. People change. They develop their own thoughts, their own desires. Voldemort would never allow that kind of risk. If he had considered making Delphi a Horcrux, he would have ensured she was completely under his control. He would have raised her in isolation, shaping her mind, forcing her to obey without question. But there is no sign of this. Delphi grew up apart from him. She was not part of his world. Perhaps even Voldemort understood that children are unreliable. He had seen what happened to others who relied on bloodlines. The pure-blood families he despised were full of weaklings, decaying, fading, obsessed with tradition. He did not believe in passing down power. He believed in taking it. Voldemort never spoke of creating a legacy. He did not care about the future beyond himself. He wanted to rule forever, not leave behind someone to replace him. If he had planned for an heir, it would mean he expected to fail. And Voldemort never planned for failure. The logic behind Delphi's existence crumbles when placed against his obsession with immortality. If she was real, she should have been part of his plan. She should have been his strongest defense. Instead, she was nothing to him. Her absence from his Horcrux strategy is proof that she was never meant to exist. She was not his tool, not his weapon, not his last hope. She was an afterthought, a character created long after the real story had ended. A true Dark Lord would have made his own daughter his greatest shield. But Voldemort did not. Because in his world, she was never there to begin with. The wizarding world is small, especially among the pure-blood families. Everyone knows everyone. Secrets don't stay hidden for long. Yet somehow, no one, not the Malfoys, not Snape, not even Voldemort's most trusted followers, ever heard a whisper about his supposed daughter. Bellatrix Lestrange was not the type to keep quiet. She was obsessed with Voldemort. Every word she spoke, every action she took, was to serve him. If she had carried his child, she would have seen it as the highest honor. She would have worshipped that child. But in the Deathly Hallows, she says nothing. Not a single mention. She fought in the Battle of Hogwarts with the same reckless devotion as always. No hesitation, no sign of a mother protecting her child's future. If Delphi existed, wouldn't she have fought differently? Wouldn't she have tried to escape? Yet she died laughing, unbothered by anything beyond her immediate defeat. The Malfoys lived in the same house as Bellatrix. If she had been pregnant, Narcissa would have known. Lucius would have known. Draco, who was already tangled in Voldemort's plans, would have known. But they never say a word. Snape was Voldemort's closest spy. He was trusted with information no one else had. Voldemort confided in him, relied on him. Yet even Snape, who knew about the Horcruxes, never mentioned a daughter. If Delphi was real, wouldn't she have been a secret worth knowing? Even Wormtail, who spent years serving Voldemort in hiding, never spoke of her. He lived in Malfoy Manor. He was part of the inner circle. He witnessed Voldemort's return. But he never once hinted at an heir. The Death Eaters were fanatics. They would have seen a child of Voldemort as something sacred, a symbol of their future. If they had known, they would have protected her. They would have ensured she was ready to take her place at his side, but none of them ever sought her out. If Delphi was hidden, who hid her? Bellatrix was always on the front lines. She had no time for secrecy. Voldemort was consumed by war. He had no interest in parenting. So who made sure no one knew? Keeping a secret like this would have been impossible. The wizarding world had spies, informants, and rumors spreading like wildfire. Yet not even Dumbledore, who knew almost everything, ever suspected Voldemort had a child. If Voldemort wanted her to remain hidden, why? He never cared about protecting anyone. He sent infants to their deaths. He murdered without hesitation. What made Delphi different? If she was meant to be his successor, why not raise her in his image? Why not train her himself? He taught Draco how to kill. He taught Snape how to deceive. But his own daughter, left in the shadows? Bellatrix, despite all her madness, was incapable of staying silent about something so important. She screamed at the idea of anyone doubting Voldemort. She died with his name on her lips, yet she never once fought for Delphi. The timeline does not add up. The secrecy does not make sense. If Delphi was real, someone, anyone, would have known. A hidden heir works in stories about kings and lost royalty. But Voldemort was not a king. He did not care about lineage. He did not need a legacy. He wanted power, not a bloodline. The absence of Delphi in every major moment of Harry Potter proves one thing. She was never there to begin with. She was not part of the plan. She was an idea added later, forced into a story that did not need her. No one knew about her because she did not belong. Not in the world Voldemort built, not in the war he waged, and certainly not in the mind of a man who saw himself as above all human ties. Delphi should have been found. It was impossible for someone like her to remain hidden, especially after the fall of Voldemort. The Ministry of Magic had dedicated itself to erasing every last trace of his reign. Aurors worked day and night to track down the remaining Death Eaters, dismantling dark magic operations and uncovering hidden threats. They followed every lead, arrested anyone even remotely connected to Voldemort's army, and monitored magical disturbances across the country. Yet somehow the supposed daughter of the Dark Lord himself slipped through their fingers. How could this have happened? If Delphi had been a true heir to Voldemort, the Ministry should have been hunting for her. Even the faintest rumor of Voldemort's child would have sent shockwaves through the wizarding world. The name alone would have sparked panic. People lived in terror of his return for years after his death. The idea that his bloodline had survived would have been considered a national emergency. Yet there was silence, no whispers, no hidden documents, no classified reports, nothing. The wizarding world was not large. Unlike the Muggle world, where people could disappear into vast cities and remote villages, the magical population was small and tightly connected. Secrets did not last long. Even Tom Riddle's heritage, something he had worked so hard to erase, was uncovered by Dumbledore. The Ministry knew the names of every magical child in Britain. They monitored bloodlines, kept track of wizarding families, and even recorded magical births. So why was Delphi never detected? If she had been raised in the magical world, she would have left traces. Accidental magic is impossible to suppress completely. Children display signs of magic at a young age, sometimes without even realizing it. Harry made glass vanish at a zoo, turned his teacher's wig blue, and found himself on the school roof, all before he knew what magic was. These outbursts happen naturally, triggered by emotion or fear. If Delphi had been raised anywhere in the wizarding world, the Ministry should have been alerted to her existence long before she became a threat. The Ministry had ways of tracking young witches and wizards. The Trace, a magical enchantment placed on underage wizards, allowed the Ministry to detect when a minor performed magic outside of Hogwarts. It was not perfect. It could not distinguish between children living in magical homes, but it was still a powerful tool. If Delphi had performed any magic before adulthood, someone would have known, and if she had been hidden among muggles, it would have been even stranger. The Ministry of Magic had an entire department dedicated to monitoring magical interference in the non-magical world. They tracked incidents where young witches and wizards accidentally revealed magic to muggles. They responded immediately, modifying memories, covering up events, and ensuring the statute of secrecy remained intact. If Delphi had been raised outside the wizarding world, any sign of accidental magic would have triggered an investigation. Hogwarts itself had a system to track magical children. Deep within the castle, an enchanted quill recorded the name of every witch and wizard born in Britain. This list was used to send letters to children when they turned 11, inviting them to Hogwarts. It did not miss anyone. Even Muggle-born students whose parents had no connection to the magical world were found and brought into the Wizarding Society. If Delphi had been born with magic, her name should have been in that book. So why was she never invited? Even more confusing is how the goblins at Gringotts never uncovered her existence. The Wizarding Bank kept detailed records of magical inheritances. If Delphi had been the daughter of Bellatrix Lestrange, she should have had a claim to the Lestrange fortune. Gold, properties, family heirlooms, something should have been passed down, yet there is no mention of her ever receiving an inheritance. Goblins were not easily fooled. If a vault existed in her name, the Ministry would have known. And then there was Harry Potter himself. After the war, he became an auror, leading efforts to track down remaining dark wizards. He knew the Death Eaters better than anyone. He had studied Voldemort's movements, understood his tactics, and had spent years ensuring that no remnants of his reign survived. If even a whisper of Voldemort's child had existed, Harry would have found it. But he never did. Hermione, as Minister for Magic, had access to the most classified information in the wizarding world. She restructured the ministry, fought corruption, and worked tirelessly to ensure that Voldemort's influence was completely eradicated. If there had been any sign of a hidden heir, she would have made it her mission to expose and contain the threat. But she never suspected anything. Draco Malfoy, despite his past ties to the Dark Lord, also knew nothing of Delphi. His family had been deeply involved with Bellatrix. They lived under the same roof at Malfoy Manor. If Bellatrix had been pregnant, Narcissa would have noticed. If a child had been born, Lucius would have known. If Voldemort had an heir, the Malfoys would have heard, but they did not. Even the remaining Death Eaters never spoke of her. After Voldemort's fall, many of his followers were captured and interrogated. Some fled into hiding, some tried to reintegrate into society, but none mentioned a child. A secret like this would have been their greatest hope. If they had known, they would have protected her, raised her, groomed her to take Voldemort's place. Yet no one did. If Delphi was hidden, who hid her? Bellatrix had no time for secrecy. She was always on the front lines, fighting and killing in her master's name. Voldemort had no patience for raising a child. He had no love for family, no interest in nurturing an heir. Who took care of her? Who kept her safe while the world was tearing itself apart? Secrets in the wizarding world rarely last. Dumbledore uncovered the truth about the Chamber of Secrets, about Horcruxes, about the Deathly Hallows. Rita Skeeter exposed hidden scandals through her magical quill. Even Snape, the most careful of spies, could not keep his secrets buried forever. Yet Delphi, somehow she remained completely undetected. The idea that she could grow up without a single trace defies logic. A child of Voldemort would have been the most important figure in the post-war era. The Ministry would have treated her existence as a crisis. The wizarding world would have been shaken to its core. But instead she was never mentioned, never suspected, never found. If Voldemort had wanted her hidden, why? He never cared about protecting anyone. He sent infants to their deaths. He murdered his own followers when they failed him. What made Delphi different? What made her worth hiding? She was not hidden. She was never part of Voldemort's world. That is the only explanation. Her absence from history is not a mystery. It is proof that she was never meant to exist. She was an afterthought, a character added long after the real story had ended. The wizarding world did not forget Delphi. It did not overlook her. It did not fail to find her. She was never there to begin with. Voldemort lived by prophecy. He built his entire war around it. It controlled his choices, shaped his fears, and ultimately led to his downfall. He believed in its power enough to mark Harry Potter as his equal. He knew how dangerous prophecies could be. Yet if he had a daughter, why didn't he create a prophecy for her? He was obsessed with controlling fate. He believed in destiny, but only if it served him. The moment he heard the words of Sybil Trelawney's prophecy, he acted. He didn't hesitate. He didn't doubt. He tried to kill the child before it could grow into his enemy. If he had a daughter, wouldn't he have done the same, only in reverse? Wouldn't he have ensured that another prophecy existed, one that declared her as the ruler of the magical world, one that promised his bloodline would live on, even if he fell? Voldemort had access to the Hall of Prophecies. He understood how prediction shaped history. He knew that belief in a prophecy gave it power. He manipulated people based on that belief. If he had wanted Delphi to take his place, he would have made sure there was a prophecy to guide her path. He surrounded himself with seers. He knew the magic of divination. If he had a daughter, he could have found a way to weave a new prophecy, one that secured her rule, one that forced the wizarding world to accept her as his successor. Yet he never did. He never spoke of an heir. He never sought out a prophecy about his bloodline. He never even hinted at the idea that someone would continue his work after he was gone. This was the same man who spent decades trying to escape death, the same man who made 7 Horcruxes, the same man who mutilated his own soul just to avoid an ending. And yet he didn't even attempt to tie his fate to his supposed daughter. It doesn't add up. If he had seen her as his future, he would have ensured that the world did too. He would have spread the idea that she was his chosen heir, that her rule was inevitable. But he never did. He feared prophecy because it was unpredictable. It forced him to act in ways he didn't always control. He tried to avoid it, yet he couldn't. It shaped his entire war. But with Delphi, there was nothing, no attempt to manipulate fate, no effort to use prophecy to secure her place. Bellatrix, his most loyal servant, would have believed in such a prophecy. She would have told the Death Eaters that Delphi was chosen, that the Dark Lord had seen her future. Yet she died without a word about an heir. Voldemort never believed in family. He did not trust bloodlines. He rejected his own father. He saw family as a weakness, not a strength. If he had a daughter, she was not part of his grand vision. His entire identity was built on the idea that he was above human ties. He did not need love, did not need an heir. He sought to become the greatest wizard of all time, a ruler, a god among mortals. What need did he have for a child? If a prophecy had existed about Delphi, the Death Eaters would have clung to it. They needed something after his fall. They needed a new leader, a new purpose. but they never looked for her, because no prophecy had ever been made. Even after his death, no record of such a prophecy existed. The ministry kept strict control over the Hall of Prophecies. If there had been even a whisper of one about Voldemort's child, Harry and his allies would have known. But there was nothing. Voldemort was obsessed with his own fate. He cared only about his own power, his own survival. A child did not fit into that. If she had, he would have shaped her destiny himself. His silence about an heir proves more than anything that she was never meant to exist. She was never in his plans. He saw no need for her. And so, just like a prophecy that was never spoken, she remained invisible to history. Delphi claims she is the daughter of Lord Voldemort. But how does she know? Who told her? She was raised in isolation, with no family, no connections, no one to verify her past. And yet, she speaks with absolute certainty about her bloodline. In The Cursed Child, she says she was raised by an old man called the Augury, a Death Eater who supposedly remained loyal to her father. But who was he really? His name barely exists in the records of Voldemort's war. If he was so devoted, why didn't he fight in the Battle of Hogwarts? Why didn't the Ministry track him down? How did he survive unnoticed while other Death Eaters were hunted, captured, and imprisoned? Even if the Augury raised her, how did he know she was Voldemort's child? Did Bellatrix tell him? Did Voldemort himself give him this secret task? That seems unlikely. Voldemort never spoke of an heir. He never planned for a successor. Why would he have entrusted a random follower with such an important secret? If Bellatrix had given birth, would she have hidden it? She was not the type to keep quiet about something so monumental. She worshipped Voldemort, devoted her life to him. If she had carried his child, she would have seen it as an honor. She would have ensured that everyone knew. Yet, in her final battle, she fought only for him, not for a daughter, not for a legacy. If Delphi discovered her origins on her own, how? Where did she find proof? The wizarding world keeps records of its bloodlines. Families have archives, vaults, and documented histories. Even Muggle-born witches and wizards can trace their magical ancestry through Ministry records. If Voldemort truly had a child, there should be some trace of it, but there is none. The Lestrange family was prestigious. Their bloodline was recorded in great detail. Their marriage contracts, their inheritances, their family tree, everything was meticulously maintained. If Bellatrix had given birth, her child would have been noted somewhere. Goblins at Gringotts would have been aware. The Ministry would have found out. Yet Delphi's name appears in no magical registry. If she had been born at Malfoy Manor, the Malfoys would have known. Narcissa, Bellatrix's own sister, would have seen the pregnancy, would have known the truth. Lucius, obsessed with power and status, would have taken an interest in the heir of the Dark Lord, but they never mention a child. Draco never speaks of a cousin. The Malfoys were under heavy Ministry surveillance after the war. If they had hidden a child, it would have been discovered. Even the Black family tapestry, which recorded every member of the noble Black bloodline, never showed Delphi's name. The tapestry was enchanted, automatically updating with new births. If Delphi was Bellatrix's daughter, why was she never added? If Delphi investigated her past, what did she find? Voldemort left no personal belongings. He had no letters, no diaries, no artifacts that would reveal he had a daughter. He erased his own family from history. Why would he leave evidence of a child? If she found old Death Eaters and demanded answers, why didn't they question her? The few remaining loyalists to Voldemort had nothing left after his fall. They were desperate, broken, clinging to a lost cause. If one of them knew of an heir, they would have sought her out. They would have protected her, groomed her, prepared her to rise again. But no one did. She calls herself the child of Voldemort, but no one in the wizarding world confirms this. The Ministry does not recognize her claim. Even her enemies, Harry, Hermione, and Draco, never acknowledge her as his true heir. If Delphi had magic strong enough to convince people, why didn't she use it to prove her lineage? Why didn't she uncover hidden documents, summon magical proof, force someone under Veritaserum to confirm her story? The wizarding world has ways of verifying identity. Blood status can be traced. Magical ancestry can be tested. If Delphi wanted to prove herself, there were ways to do it. But she never does. She expects people to believe her with no evidence. She expects the world to accept her word as truth. But Voldemort's entire reign was built on proof, on fear, on symbols, on demonstrations of power. A true heir would have done the same. The simple truth is this: no one else discovered this truth because there was nothing to discover. Delphi believes she is Voldemort's daughter, but belief is not proof. And in a world where bloodlines matter, where magic does not forget, her claim crumbles under even the slightest scrutiny. She was not hidden, she was not erased from history, she was never there to begin with. If Delphi was so desperate to bring back her father, why didn't she search for his Horcruxes? Why did she ignore the very magic that had once made him immortal? Voldemort built his entire reign on the idea that death could be conquered. He tore his soul apart, creating multiple anchors to the world. Even after their destruction, traces of his power could have remained. Yet instead of seeking out these remnants, Delphi took the most reckless and illogical path: time travel. The Horcruxes were not ordinary magical objects. They had absorbed Voldemort's essence. Even after being physically destroyed, could there have been something left? Could a powerful dark ritual have extracted lingering magic from them? If Delphi was as skilled in the dark arts as she claimed, why didn't she try? Nagini, the last Horcrux, was killed just moments before Voldemort himself. But what about the remains? Could something have been salvaged? A fang? A piece of her enchanted skin? The snake was no ordinary creature. She carried a fragment of Voldemort's soul within her for years. Delphi, if she had truly wanted to resurrect him, should have started there. The Ring of Marvolo-Gaunt was cursed, but contained deep, ancient magic. Even Dumbledore had struggled against its power. Could some of that energy still exist in the ruins of the ring? If Delphi had found it, could she have tried to reactivate the magic that once protected Voldemort's soul? The diary of Tom Riddle was more than just a Horcrux. It had functioned as a living memory, almost a second version of Voldemort himself. Even after Harry destroyed it, traces of its dark magic could have remained. Why didn't Delphi try to recover it? The locket of Salazar Slytherin was lost in the depths of the Black Lake before being retrieved. Magic, especially dark magic, often leaves behind echoes. Could Delphi have searched for residual energy in the cave where Voldemort had hidden it? Could she have used it in some forbidden ritual? Ravenclaw's diadem was consumed in fiend fire, one of the most destructive magical forces known. But fire does not erase all magic. Could the ashes of the diadem still have held power? Could they have been gathered, studied, used? The cup of Helga Hufflepuff, destroyed in the Chamber of Secrets, had once contained Voldemort's soul. Did Delphi even try to investigate the remains? Did she search for pieces of shattered gold, looking for something left behind? Even Harry himself had once been a Horcrux. The fragment of Voldemort's soul inside him was destroyed by the killing curse. But what if some essence remained? Could Delphi have tried to extract it from Harry's blood? He had been connected to Voldemort in ways no one else had. If Delphi had been truly desperate, she might have sought out Harry, not to fight him, but to use him. There were legends of dark magic even more terrifying than Horcruxes, spells that could summon lost souls, forbidden rituals to restore a shattered spirit. If Delphi had the knowledge and skill to attempt time travel, she should have had the ability to explore these options. But she never did. Instead, she chose the most ridiculous, most dangerous plan imaginable: changing history. Time travel is chaotic, unpredictable. Even the most brilliant witches and wizards in history had failed to control it. If Delphi truly wanted to bring back her father, why would she gamble on such an unreliable method? Even Voldemort, who believed himself above all others, never attempted to rewrite time. He relied on power, manipulation, and dark magic, not destiny. Yet Delphi, claiming to be his heir, ignored the tools that had once made him immortal. Was it because she didn't know where to look? Perhaps. But that only raises more questions. If she was raised to worship her father, why wasn't she taught about his Horcruxes? If she truly studied the dark arts, how did she overlook their potential? Or was it simply because her story wasn't thought through? Was she created as an afterthought, inserted into the world of Harry Potter without a plan? Her choices suggest that she was. Because any true heir of Voldemort would have sought power first, not luck. A real successor to the Dark Lord would not have left everything to chance. A real dark witch would have hunted for remnants of Voldemort's magic, sought out rituals, explored the deepest secrets of the dark arts. But Delphi, she acted like someone who didn't understand the world she claimed to belong to, like someone who didn't truly belong in the story at all.